Hello, we are now into December, and every day a new Best Books of the Year list comes out, which is such a treat because I so enjoy browsing through these lists to see what I've read, what I might want to read, and what the critics agree on. It's like opening the windows of an advent calendar, discovering all of these new lists. Speaking of which, my wonderful partner got me a tea advent calendar this year, which is so fantastic because I always drink so much tea, but especially at this time of year when it's really cold outside in London. So I'm just chugging tea constantly. And of course, the very first window is a Christmas black tea. So I've made a mug of it to enjoy while I go through this new list of books. It's really spicy and a wonderful scent. So the new list today comes from the Financial Times, where they list out their best books of fiction for 2024. And they have picked out 9 novels. So I'm going to go through these books, give brief descriptions of them, if I have any thoughts or feelings about them, whether I've read them or not, and count up how many of these books I've actually read. So I'd love to know what you think of this particular selection. And the very first book on the list is The Voyage Home by Pat Barker, which is actually the third novel in a trilogy that she's written, a rewriting of great mythology surrounding the big battle of Troy, and so this takes place when the battle has ceased after a decade. Agamemnon is returning home with his new stolen wife Clytemnestra, who can see the future, and he's returning home to his wife. Wait, have I got those names right? Yeah, Clytemnestra. He's returning home to his wife. I get so mixed up with all of this like Greek mythology in the name. So he's returning home to Clytemnestra, who is pissed because Agamemnon has sacrificed their daughter for the sake of winning the war. But he is returning home with his new wife Cassandra, who is a sort of sorceress, and she can see the future, and she can see her within this sorcery. She can see her own death as well as Agamemnon's death, and so between her and Clytemnestra, I don't really fancy Agamemnon's chances of this. And so these tales are very well known, even though I get always mixed up with the names of it. But I think the real pleasure will be in seeing how Pat Barker gives a new perspective, especially a feminist slant, focusing on the perspectives of the women in the book. So I have still only read the first book in this trilogy of The Silence of the Girls, and then the second book in this series is The Women of Troy, which I've not read yet. So I do want to go back to read that before getting to this new novel, and hopefully by the time I get to this new novel, I'll have kept all of the names straight in my mind. Number 2 on the list is Long Island Compromise by Taffy, Brodesser-Akner, and this novel is based off from a real historical kidnapping that occurred on Long Island, but this fictionalizes this incident where in 1980 a wealthy businessman is kidnapped from his driveway, and it follows the consequences of this dramatic incident for him and for his family, following them through the decades and the years, but also looks at larger issues and traditions to do with American Jewish life. And this is a novel that I have kept hearing about through these different lists. So it is definitely a book that I want to get to. Number 3 on the list is Samantha Harvey's Orbital, which won this year's Booker Prize, a very slight novel that I loved reading. I got so involved in this story following 6 astronauts in a spacecraft that is circling the planet, and their observations of the planet, but also the dramas of their individual lives and their connections and relationships to each other. Now, I know for a lot of readers who enjoy a really strongly plot-driven novel that this novel might feel very slight and lacking, but if you enjoy meditative experience, looking at life and our relationship to each other and the planet, I think it is absolutely beautiful, and it is beautifully written. It is so poetic, the language she uses in this novel, and also looking at just human relationships and how really the borders that we create between each other and between nations are artificial, and there are so many moments in this book that I keep thinking back on, like when at one moment one of the astronauts makes a connection through radio with a random person down on the planet, and how they have this very short conversation, which has a very limited time to it because they are rapidly moving around the planet, and so their connection is going to shortly be lost, and they just have this beautiful, very fleeting connection to each other, but also the issues that some of these different astronauts are pondering, and the large questions that they ask about life and faith and the meaning of human existence. And so this book encompasses so much. I think I feel like so honored that she signed this book to me. It's a really precious book and experience, and one that I think I can I'll just be able to go back to and dip in and out of to read passages of it to feel inspired. Number 4 on the list is another very short novel, Rosarita by Anita Desai, and this story follows a young Indian woman who is traveling through Mexico and feels a sense of independence and a great sense of freedom from her past and expectations that have been placed upon her. But then she meets a mysterious woman who claims to have known her mother and starts telling her things which don't line up with what this young woman knows about her mother. So there's a whole mystery about her family past, and she's drawn into exploring these questions. Now they say in the article that this is a book that can be read just over a couple of hours, and I've not read it yet because I've been saving it for a time when I can just sit down and read it all in one big gulp, because I love being able to experience a short book like that. So I'm waiting for when I have time for that. Hopefully sometime during the Christmas holidays I'll finally get to reading this, because I've loved reading Anita Desai's fiction in the past. Number 5 on the list, Joms by Percival Everett, the winner of this year's National Book Award. This tremendous, moving and powerful novel which reimagines Mark Twain's The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn from the character of Jim's perspective, and how he gets inside his psychology, but also a different point of view of this whole era than what we've had before, and a new view and slant on this story, which is so much fun. If you know the tale of Huckleberry Finn, which it's not necessary to have read that first book, but I think it's highly advisable, because the way he plays off from that and shows scenes which we are not shown in that original novel, and broadens our perspective and understanding of these characters is so valuable and fascinating and really thrilling to follow, I think. So what an incredible novel. I hope it wins even more awards. Number 6 on the list is Small Rain by Garth Greenwell, a novel set during the recent COVID pandemic, and follows an unnamed narrator and poet who experiences a health crisis and has to go into care about the struggle in the health care system that he experiences, but also this shift in focus where he's lived such an inner life and now having to attend to the necessities of his body and his health. So it's exploring art and memory, but also health self-care in a really meaningful way. And I've not read this yet. I loved Greenwell's debut novel, What Belongs to You. So I'm looking forward to finally getting to this. Number 7 on the list is Our Evenings by Alan Hollinghurst. Quite a chunky novel, but one that is so worth reading and taking your time with. And it's really sweet that this comes right after Garth Greenwell's novel on the list, because I'll tell you a funny story. When Garth Greenwell came to London promoting his debut novel, What Belongs to You, I was at a publishing event with Garth Greenwell and introduced Garth to Alan Hollinghurst for the first time. And it was so sweet, their initial encounter, because Garth Greenwell was totally gobsmacked and so inspired by this author, and to be meeting him for the first time was such a big experience. So he was looked like quite starstruck, whereas Alan Hollinghurst, I think, could tell that Garth felt this way, and so it was just like, yes, hello, I am Alan Hollinghurst, and it was just such a sweet encounter. And I even took a picture of it. I'll see if I can find a copy of that picture and put it up here if I can find it. But anyway, Our Evenings, I think, is my favorite Alan Hollinghurst novel that I've read thus far. He is just a master at prose and creating a sense of a person's life in such an expansive way. And so he charts his protagonist's life over the course of 60 years and breaks up the novel. So the first half is concentrating on his time at a boarding school, following a man who is an outsider in a number of different ways. In that he was born to a working class family, that he's gay, and he's mixed race. But he gets a scholarship to a boarding school, a prestigious boarding school, and so receives an elite English education. But he is also treated and feels like an outsider due to a number of these factors of the way that people react to him and the way they treat him. So we experience so much his point of view and perspective on these things, but he's so lively and funny in how he deals with a number of challenging situations like this, but is also so tender and emotional, following his family life, his mother who takes his single mother who takes on a partner of another woman herself, and tracing his experiences through the ages as he's recalling these different stages of his life, and later on revisiting places of his youth and his new understanding of these physical locations. And so the way it traces the process of aging in this way, I think, is so powerful and beautiful. And this is another novel that it's not necessarily very strongly plot driven, although there are a number of mysteries and things to do with his life. I'm following the trajectory of it, but it's, yes, much more a very reflective book, looking at the day-to-day experiences and small scenes where you can understand the larger social context and tensions that are going on beneath the surface of these interactions and conversations, which he recalls. And so, yeah, I was completely enraptured by this novel, but also how it's giving a different take on recent British history leading up to the Brexit vote in this country. Number 8 on this list is Intermezzo by Sally Rooney, another novel that includes a lot of dialogue and conversations to portray the lives of this small group of Irish individuals, especially two brothers who recently lost their father, and their experience of grief, but also their messy relationship situations and their difficult connection with each other. And there are so many wonderful moments in this book, but it is another very thoughtful book, thought-provoking book. There is some plot and dramatic tension to it, especially of an adorable little dog who the fate of this dog who had been living with the brothers daughter's father prior to his death. I found that really moving to follow, but also, yeah, following their perspectives through this different time, and you get small bits of the perspectives of some of their partners as well. But yeah, the way it traces these relationships and how this is these individual experiences and small group of people, how they are contemplating many like bigger issues that are going on in the world today. And finally, number 9 on the list is Tell Me Everything by Elizabeth Strout. And I absolutely love Strout's writing. And she is such a well-known author now. You know, she's been on Oprah's Book Club, multiple choice, been nominated for so many different awards. And I saw her speak a few months ago, and hearing her describe her journey and struggle to become a full-time writer. It's such a great story and experience, but how the many different characters in the Elizabeth Strout universe come together in this novel. So you have Lucy Barton, you have Olive Kitteridge, you have Bob Burgess, and many other characters, and how she balances all these different stories and characters in this book, I think is so wonderful. And but also, this is another novel on this list that is heavily made up of conversations, and so it's a very like dialogue heavy list of books to recommend, but such a great novel, and such a wonderful representation of the state of Maine where I grew up, and so there are sections of this book when Olive Kitteridge makes this sound of like "aya," and which is a very Maine sound, a traditional like Maine accent, which I don't personally have. I come from southern Maine, where it's a much more kind of like flat American accent. But if you have a traditional Maine accent, you will probably make this affirmative sound, which is "aya." And so recently, in my home, I've started making this sound of "aya," and my partner's like stop sounding like Olive Kitteridge and bringing that. But I loved reading this novel and following these characters' continuing journeys later in their lives, and the romantic tension involved in this story, but also a tale of friendship and human connection. And also there's a central mystery to this story, which is separate from these characters' lives, kind of new characters that are taken into the story. So even though this is a relatively short book, I mean, it's just over like 300 pages, but she contains so much in this story that is like about life itself, but is a very heavily plotted novel as well that has a whole mystery at its center. And I just love the book so much, and that there are these wonderful hardback editions of the novel, and that these look so beautiful on my shelves together. I just have the Lucy Barton sides of the books, and I should get I do have the Olive Kitteridge books as well, but in different editions from these hardback editions. So if I want to be a completist and to put them all on my shelves together, I should get copies of those. But that is a very geeky thing. But yeah, would be beautiful to see them all on my shelves together like that. So those are the 9 books on the FT list. Let me know what you think about these choices. Yeah, a lot of these choices have appeared on other book lists, so it would have been good to hear some like new and refreshing books that I've not heard of before. But also, I loved so many of these books so much. So I think, they deserve to be celebrated and talked about even more. But let me know what you think of the list. If you've read any of these books, if you're interested in reading any of them now, or if there are any other novels or books that you want to suggest as some of the best of the year, let me know about that in the comments below. But I hope you have a wonderful day, that you're keeping warm and having lots of cups of tea, if that's your drink of choice, or coffee, I guess. I'm not a coffee drinker, but I do enjoy a good cup of tea. But I will speak to you again soon. Bye-bye.